It's a very big honor for me to be here. Sujit ran into me at the nice idiom, ran into me. I have to remember that. I'm teaching 2 Turkish doctors English. We talk a lot about idioms. Hit the road. At any rate, he stopped me as I was going out the door because in the embassy there is a picture in the stairway of, what is that temple? The one with the Pashvarinath, with a gold bull that I bought by an artist named something Bachardia. And I gave it to the embassy. I gave it to the ambassador. And I walked all the way through the place looking for that picture to see if they put it on the wall. Back 4 or 5 years ago when I went to one of the Nepal days. And so when I was leaving, Sujit was there and he stopped and he said, "Where are you?" And Dan Mannion, who is our treasurer for Friends of Nepal, and I'll talk about Friends of Nepal in a minute, was there also. And I was looking at that picture, and I'll pass around a picture of that beautiful piece of art. I happen to be walking in downtown Pokhara, if there is a downtown Pokhara. I trained in Upala Lamachur. Lamachur was the Pokhara school, Pokhara boarding school, run by
Gandhi boarding school.
Yeah. It was run by the people that run Shining Light Hospital. They're a mission group.
It was
United Mission in Nepal. That's what it was. Yeah. And we got a great training because they have a fabulous facility there. But when I was down in Pokhara on my last week there, I happened to notice there was a Pasal, Royal Fine Arts Society, Royal Fine Arts Society. And they had a number of beautiful pieces of art, and I bought 4 of them. Rolled them up, carried them across the world, and now they're framed and hanging. 2 of them are hanging in Curry House in Burke, the Nepali restaurant that's owned by some Nepalis, and they own 2 other restaurants as well. 2 of them are hanging there. One of them is Dorali. Is a scene in Dorali. Yeah. Oh, the artist is Durga Baral, a famous political cartoonist in Nepal, I discovered.
Very famous.
Yeah. And the other one is Machiputra, with a lake in front of it and a house. And the house is beautifully reflected into the lake. And those are my finest pieces of Nepali art that I brought back, along with 2 brass bowls. Oh, and some Tibetan carpets, and you probably have a lot of those. But it was a real remarkable experience to see that piece of art that I donated to the ambassador to be hung in his residence in perpetuity. And so I was stopped there, and that's where I met you. Yep. Otherwise, I would have walked on out. It just happened to catch me. So I'll show you a picture of it later. What I want to talk about is Friends of Nepal. My phone will cooperate. Friends of Nepal has been operating since about 1969, and it is exclusively returned Peace Corps volunteers and friends of Peace Corps volunteers. We have, there's no paid staff, I assume, just like ANS, and we exist particularly to raise money for projects in Nepal. None of them can be government projects. We do not donate the money to government. There has to be a returned Peace Corps volunteer involved with that project somehow. They know the project, they work there, they work with the people, so that we know that the money is getting to the place that it's supposed to go, and not to government ministers' bakshish pockets, you know? Goose cunning? So I want to talk about, we raise about $25,000 to $30,000 a year. You like that? Isn't that cool? So very Chinese. We raise about and we spend $25,000. We have about $5,000 in expenses, you know, accounting and lawyers and website and mailings and stuff like that. I just found out There are 1,810 returned Peace Corps volunteers from Nepal living in the United States that we have records of. And I'm going to pass to Sujit the list from what we call the DVM area, the DC, Virginia, Maryland, DMV area, yeah. So then he'll have that and he can invite them to future meetings. Dan Donahue, who was in Nepal 47, is the president. You know Dan? Yeah, Dan was, he had an unusual job. He has a Bachelor's of Arts in like political science from Holy Cross University, nice Catholic university. And he didn't do anything, he didn't have any science background, and they taught him how to inseminate dairy cows. So Dan would get the semen from Kathmandu, and he had a supply of liquid nitrogen. They're called straws, and it's stored in there. And he would go out and tell all these people that when their cows Bayani, start calling to be mated, I guess is the word, that they need to bring them in and they were going to inseminate them. And he wrote this out in really nice Nepali and was taking it out and passing it out at the villages, and I said, that's really wonderful, Dan. They can't read. I said, you're going to get zipped. You got to go out to the villages and talk to these people. His Nepali was, I'll be nice, awkward. So the other thing he had, and this was really quite remarkable, a little portable TV with a videotape that showed these cows and what they did and how it worked and all, and it operated off of a car battery. So he carried this cart with all this and he'd plug it in and he'd turn on this video, and these people were just and the most common question he got was, how did that little man get in that box? Missed the whole message, just missed the message. And I felt so sorry for Dan. After the first year, the liquid nitrogen plant in Kathmandu died. And they couldn't get parts from Switzerland in time, so he didn't have anything to do. I said, well, you can come and sit in agriculture class when I'm teaching, or you can go meet with Bill Brandt, who was the volunteer in Ag Marketing Corporation, and pass out fertilizer or whatever. But he went to the Zonal Veterinary Hospital and became a veterinary assistant. And Dan really caught on quite remarkably. And I discovered he was a great resource. So I had a laying hen operation, little chicks that laid eggs. And I got a house built from a gift from the Canadian government. The Canadian Gurkhas gave this gift to the school. I was at a British Gurkha school, Pakliawa Vocational Agriculture School in Rupandehi district, right across from the old British Gurkha camp before they moved to Pokhara. Okay? Hot, nasty. The British hated it there. I can't imagine why. They took over most of Africa that way too. So at any rate, Dan went to the Zonal Veterinary Hospital and became a veterinary assistant. And I went down to him one day and I said, Dan, I've got these chicks and I think they're dying of Rhinochet-Newcastle disease, which is a well-documented, well-known disease, but there's a vaccine for it. And he said, I think we have a vaccine for that. And I said, oh gosh, sorry baba, ooh yeah, that's wonderful. So we went and looked in, he had a kerosene refrigerator. I opened the refrigerator and there was a speaker full of all of these little ampules, and it said on it, Rhinochet, in English and Nepali. And he said, here, have one, have two, have three. He said, they just sit here. Well, the Zonal Veterinary Hospital, who had the equivalent of a high school degree, the zonal veterinary doctor, which would be equivalent of a state veterinarian here, was off at some training in India. And he said, oh, he won't mind, he never uses them, so go ahead and take one. The problem was, we had no instructions. We had no way to know what to dilute. I knew you had to have distilled water, which we did not have, and I knew you needed to have a ratio to how many birds that was for. And what you did, once you did it, you kind of pricked them in the neck. And it's like polio, or not polio, smallpox vaccine. It imparts an immunity to these birds when they're chicks. And then we wouldn't lose as many as we were losing, about 50% of the time. So it was everywhere, you know, and humans don't get Ronnie Kent in Newcastle. So I went and I thought, okay, so we're going to assume that that's probably for about 100. So I'm going to get this British Gurkha camp water. I'm going to leave it out overnight to dissipate the chlorine. I'm going to run it through a few filters, although they filtered it. And then I'm going to mix it with this and start injecting the chickens and the chicks. And I did. I lost about 10-20% of the birds, which I thought was acceptable given the environment and what I knew. And Dan said when the zonal veterinary doctor came back, he was furious. And I said, why? We used the stuff for the purpose it was intended. And he said, yes, but he has to account for all that stuff to Kathmandu, and so he never gives it away. Zoom, over my head. So anyway, I said, well, did you find out how many birds it was for? Yes, 1,000. Oh, so I gave them 10 times too much. Well, I was real lucky we only lost 20%. Welcome to Nepal. So that was my environment and what I used. I learned a lot about poultry pathology. I had 3 diseases in the flocks, Newcastle, fowlpox, and fowl cholera, that would have quarantined the whole state of Virginia. We would have not been able to ship birds anywhere because of those 3 diseases. All 3 are readily treatable in the United States. Well, I got the vaccine. Fowl cholera you treat with a sulfa drug. So I went to the local pharmacy. It's amazing. You could buy all kinds of drugs on the street in Nepal legally. Yeah. I bought Valium. It was a wonderful drug. Made me feel like it's called the damn it drug. I don't care. So I bought some sulfadimethoxine. You know what sulfadimethoxine looks like for cattle? It's a bolus. It's a pill about this big and about that big around. And you blow it down the throat of the cow and you hold their mouth shut till they swallow it. And it works. It treats a lot of bacterial infections. So what do? I discovered you can grind it up with a mortar and pestle from the science laboratory. We had those things, but they never used them because they didn't know what they were for. And then you put it in their water. And their water system was basically a terracotta pot with water we replenished every day. And it got rid of the fowl cholera. Fowlpox, we learned to, I made what's called an autogenous vaccine. Have you ever heard of autogenous vaccine? It's very, very common in developed countries to make these. Self-generating is what autogenous means. And what you do is you take some of the serum out, or blood, and you spin down the serum, and then you dilute it, and then you put it into their web skin. And it's like smallpox. They get a little pox, and then they're immune. And that one worked really well. So I was really, I was really puffed up. I was doodle-munchy. But I didn't get to share this with anybody. None of the other volunteers at Top Ag were here. They were all in the hill country.
So you didn't see the pox in the cow?
You see like a little smallpox in their wing web.
They are all over the body?
No. If it was all over the body, they were infected.
Okay.
So, like a smallpox vaccine, you used to get a scab.
Vaccine, but when they get it?
They get it all over their body,
All over
their beaks and inside. And when you get smallpox, it's all in your internal organs. It's a respiratory virus.
Internal?
Yeah, and it has a 21-day incubation. What we used to do when kids were growing up, you wanted them to get not smallpox. Chicken pox. It's the same virus, chicken pox, and you'd have them breathe on each other. And sure enough, my son got it in 16 days, and he was pretty miserable after his sister had it. But so the fowlpox vaccine, which is the same family, is the same principle. You give them a live attenuated means reduced infection virus, the same way you do with a smallpox vaccine, which is smallpox has gone away in the United States. So anyway, I'm going to go back to Friends in Nepal. Friends in Nepal founded in there it is. So Samsung has changed their program, and when you turn your phone, it doesn't automatically turn. You have to catch this little icon and push it now. Jeez, so annoying. So I want to talk about the 5 programs we funded this year. We have just, is that right? We just accepted funding. That's right. These are funded this year for next year. They're actually operating now. You have to have an operating program to get a grant from Friends of Nepal. So there are 5 of them. They each receive $5,000 directly into their bank account. So nobody takes a share of it. One of them is the Community-Based Organization Development Center. Improving the health and nutrition, and nutrition of women and children in the Mahanya Rural Municipality, Kailali, right, district, through family gardening, clean drinking water, and strengthened community groups. So our goals are, for 5 years it was let girls learn. That was our focus. Now it's COVID redevelopment, reconstruction, climate change, and let girls learn. Whatever in that category you can do. That's Community-Based Organization Development Center. The next one is Hands in Outreach. I hope some of you know these organizations. I like to see nodding heads because we don't always know these. We trust volunteers. Pani for All project. I like that. Or as my granddaughter says, agua. Aimed at storing and supplying clean drinking water at the Chantilly Learning Center in Kathmandu, as well as improving water quality and health for students' families. I can't think of a more, in the United States, as a scientist, in the United States, there were several really incredible public health findings and projects that brought us lots of years of longevity, increasing life expectancy, which actually dropped 2 years during COVID, unfortunately. Amazing. One of them is the finding of clean water, eliminating cholera, eliminating all the disease that waterborne contamination carries. So I was very, very fortunate that we had what were called borings. They were artesian wells, yeah, down 200 some feet. I grew up in a city, Memphis, that had artesian well water. It was enormously clean, and we didn't have to put chlorine in it. And the EPA, when it was formed, said, you will put chlorine in your water. And we said, we don't want to put chlorine in our water. And the reason you put chlorine in your water is for backflow. When you put a hose in a swimming pool, and the water's off, or the water's on, either way, and let's say at dinner time everybody turns on their water and there's negative pressure, it pulls that swimming pool water into the system. So there needs to be chlorine in their EPA sale. Memphis water is still some of the best water on the planet. Clean drinking water. So British Gurkha Camp supplied our school chlorinated water. It was wonderful. Hands in Outreach, that's just the one. Nepal Tea Foundation. Society Development Center. Composting, training, and facilitation program in Feedum. Okay, Feedum. Panchtar district.
Yeah, Panchtar.
That will result in the consumption and use of composting toilets, plus training in applying composting on small tea plantations, small tea farms. I'm about to buy a whole bunch of tea from this group. What are they called? Tea. Yeah, they're an assortment package to send to all my friends so that they will buy from them as well. My favorite tea, as I told some of you, is Assam. I thought that was the most incredible, and not India, Assam Nepali tea, which is really difficult to get in the U.S. The fourth one is Vision Dolpo. Construction of compost toilets on school campuses in Dotara, Dolpo district, using local materials plus educating community families on their benefits and use, leading to reduction of open defecation and associated water pollution. Same thing, clean water raises life expectancy. Society Development Center, SODEC, assisting small farmers in Sankuwasaba district. Yeah, that's right? Okay. Increasing macadamia nut production by supplying macadamia nut tree seedlings. I never knew Nepal grew macadamia
Yeah,
nuts.
did?
I thought only Hawaii did. Wow. Training in plant care and management and developing market strategies. Those are the 5 we're funding. In 2023, taking into account the results of Friends of Nepal membership survey, which we sent out recently, our grant focus will continue to be climate change, conservation, and sustainability, with an additional emphasis on benefiting girls and women. So this is in our appeal letter that just went out, and we try to raise $25,000. We have $25,000 right now, but we'd like to get another $25,000 to fund these projects and roll over next year. So that's what Friends of Nepal is all about. I'm the corporate secretary. Dan Donahue, M47, he was there when I was, as I explained, is the president, and Joe Mannion is the treasurer. And Joe was in Jumla. He calls it Joe Mannion. I said Dan. Jumla Joe. Jumla Joe at gmail.com or Outlook or the other. Anyway, does anybody have any questions? I had just had a phenomenal experience. I'm probably one of the few Peace Corps volunteers that has not been back to Nepal. I came back, went to graduate school in poultry science because I did chickenology at the University of Arkansas, which is probably one of the best poultry science schools in the world. And I got married then, had a baby, and life kind of intervened, and I wasn't able to spend a lot of money and go back to Nepal. Most people that went back to Nepal loved it because they liked to trek, they liked to go in the mountains. I didn't live there. I lived in the Terai. You know, I lived at 400 feet above sea level, and it was frequently 110 degrees in the summer.
What part of the island?
Yeah, Butwal, Bible. Yeah, Rupande. I lived about 14 kilometers from Lumbini. And before they built it up, I went out there and there wasn't anything there but the Asoka pillar.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
and the little box where he was born, kind of like
Oh,
Bethlehem.
now it's so nice.
Oh, now it's the monks have done a good job. So I didn't trek. One of the reasons was I have acrophobia, fear of heights, and I did not like walking on paths, you know, where you're looking down.
Yeah.
And when I did training, I would try to look the other way. And I had a cane. I had a cane and would walk, but I just was. When I'm sitting down in an airplane, I'm fine. But I do not like walking around an airplane. It's just a thing you contract as. So all of you from the hill country you wouldn't have lived if you'd had that kind of condition. So any questions?
Did you choose Nepal or you just assigned?
So yeah, Peace Corps at that point in time would give you could pick a region, you could pick a country, but it really depended on this. It's complicated politically, but Peace Corps politics back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. The Democrat ideal was taking Bachelor of Arts generalists, giving them a skill and sending them and teaching them the language. There's no other organization that teaches language as well as Nepal, or as well as Peace Corps. So you could pick a region, a country, and it was really whether that country had an opening. So what I did was anywhere, but as far away from here as I can get. Because I lived at home and went to college, and I hated it. So I went as far away as I could, to the other side of the earth, and my mother kept going, why? So what happened was I was issued an invitation. That was the last ones they did this way. And I went to a pre-invitational staging conference. Did you go to one of those? Yeah, in Chicago. And they had volunteers from Nepal come in and tell us about Nepal. I was sold. As far away as you could get, I was sold. And then when you got there, Peace Corps Nepal we were in a particular program. I was going for vocational agriculture. and then they had openings, and they picked where you wanted to go, and you could say, I want to go to the hill country, I want to go to the Terai, and I picked the Terai because I didn't like mountains. Yeah, yeah. So being in the Terai was a very, very different experience from volunteers elsewhere, because there are so many languages and so many what they refer to as deshis that were Indians and speak their own language. Very few Nepalis are down in that. But it's the breadbasket in Nepal, and agriculture was what I wanted. Yeah. We had 5 volunteers. Ed Denham was a fisheries volunteer, and he had a wife, Daisy, who was a nurse and ran a little infirmary up near Bootwall. Did you ever meet Ed and Daisy?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah. Bill Brandt, who became Deputy Administrator of the Foreign Ag Service here in the United States and retired a few years ago, was an ag marketing specialist for that zone, Lumbini zone ag marketing, and he taught. And he went around and gave out, and when I'd go up there to get fertilizer for demonstration plots, which was kind of funny or unusual because the general population couldn't get fertilizer, you'd open that fertilizer door and there'd be these bags of fertilizer. USAID, Saudi Arabia, North Korea. And he said, yeah, we get fertilizer from all over. So they get the fertilizer donated and they sell it to farmers to pay for the distribution of it. Tractors were rare. And when I was in Nepal, they were doing land redistribution, taking land away from farmers that had too much and giving it to other farmers. It was the king's new plan. Back to the village. Yeah. And the sad thing about that was they had all these tractors and they couldn't use them because they ended up having 5 or 10 hectares, and you needed like 100 hectares or more to operate
You cannot
these.
have more than whatever.
Yeah. Back to the village. Har kera herda. Yeah. Ani donar ali runsa. So, any other questions? Friends of Nepal is really dedicated to raising the living standard and based on the things that our members tell us. Like I said, we have 1,810 potential members, but only about 400 paying dues members. So anybody can join, but we encourage. Now we have a relationship when a volunteer comes back from Nepal, we get notice and their email, and we can contact them and say, hey, you like Nepal? Help us here. So, any other questions?
Well, thank you for everything
Thank
you did.